Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Allen and Heath Avantis Deep Dive webinar. This webinar is part of a whole sequence of events that make up our Virtual Digital Console Expo this year. Our company, TC Furlong Inc., has been putting on the Digital Console Expo for 10 years now. Of course, we couldn't have an in-person event this year, so we've pivoted to a virtual event, and we're very thankful to have all of you joining us here today. Today is day 2 of our 3-day virtual event. So if you've missed anything that's happened so far, let me give you a quick recap. We've had 2 main session presentations yesterday morning and again this morning. And we've had some Q&A live breakout sessions as well. I want to let you know that those main session presentations from all the manufacturers that have presented so far are going to be available on our YouTube channel. I believe day 1 is already available for you to review. So if there's anything that you've missed so far, or if you just want to go back and look at something that you caught during the show when you watched it live, that will all be available on our channel. And I will be linking to that in the chat. We've also had a few deep dive sessions already, including one with Allen and Heath already so far. And again, those are all going to be available on our YouTube channel in the near future, the next couple of days, the next week. So again, we're here for the Avantis deep dive webinar from Allen and Heath today. Before I throw it over to our experts, I just want to give you a quick introduction to our company, just in case there's anyone here who isn't familiar with TC Furlong Inc. We're a live sound company based in Lake Forest, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. We've been in business for nearly 50 years now, and everything that we do kind of falls under one of 4 umbrellas, those being equipment sales, equipment rentals, live events, and services, which include repairs, sound system design, sound system alignment, RF coordination, and a whole lot more. So that's a little bit more about us. Now I want to tell you a little bit about the gentleman who will be joining us to tell us about the Avantis today. We're going to have Pat McConnell here. He's a regional sales manager with Allen and Heath. And we've got Shawn McLoughlin joining us as well. Shawn is the sales rep for AudioBiz, which is the company that represents Allen and Heath and a bunch of other great manufacturers here in our area. Before I throw it over to them, just want to give you a quick heads up that we want this to be an interactive session. There is a Q&A box for you to enter in any questions that you have. So we encourage you to do that throughout the presentation. If we can pick anything out to answer quickly as we're presenting, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll pick everything up at the end of the session to make sure we get everybody's questions answered. And with that, I'm going to throw it over to you, Pat and Shawn.
All right. Nice job, Aaron, and thank you for the introduction. It's fun to be back for our second deep dive session, as it is. Yep. Happy to be here with Redbeard, local legend in the audio industry, aka Shawn with AudioBiz. We've known each other a long time and occasionally post bail for one another. So it's fun to hang out here in this undisclosed bunker in Wisconsin where we're transmitting from. Yep. Some of you have probably joined some of our previous presentations. Once again, just want to give acknowledgement and thanks to the TC Furlong crew for doing such a phenomenal job with another Digital Console Expo in a fun way, in the best way that we could possibly do it. When those guys they're pretty humble when they say, well, we just decided we'd pivot. They've done a phenomenal job with this, and I hope that you're all enjoying it. In these times, I think it's been a great opportunity for all of us in the audio industry to sort of work on our chops. It's a chance to learn a little bit more, to do a little more research. Maybe we're not as busy as we'd like to be, but this is a cool way for us to get together to convey more information about the product. So deep dive, if you signed in, welcome. You've signed up for the deep dive for Avantis. We did D-Live yesterday. Today is Avantis from 5 until about 6. Might be a little shorter, could be a little longer if we end up with a lot of stuff that needs answering. And then tomorrow at the same time, 5 to 6 p.m., we're going to focus on SQ series. So while this is a primarily Avantis targeted event, we talk a lot about peripherals, how these work within the Allen and Heath ecosystem, and some of the other products that we have and use as tools in support of the Avantis system. So if you've got questions about, hey, I'd like to know how your ME personal monitors work, or what do you have for controls for this, or how can we do this? What boxes do we use? By all means, it's a really casual, very open forum. So the more questions you ask, the more fun we can typically have with it. I understand that sometimes these are just the things that you want to tune into and just observe a little bit, do a little lurking and see what you get out of it, and you're welcome for that as well. Shawn, anything that you'd like to say to kick us off?
Yeah, just like Pat was saying, feel free to put your questions in the question and answer box. We'll either answer them live, myself or Pat will jump in. I'm going to be kind of off to the side moderating. That's a hard word to say.
You might moderation is not easy for us.
No,
it's not.
You'll also probably see Jeff Holly, who's our marketing manager, pop up online, and he might be answering questions also. So thank you guys for attending, and we'll let Pat get at it.
All right. So without further ado, trust me, it gets better looking than this. I really don't want you looking at me. What we'd rather look at is the console. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about just how we came about designing the Avantis, where it sits, and what some of the applications are for us. Some of it is just to kind of frame it, and rather than PowerPoint at you with a bunch of slides, it's easy because I just do this, free flowing as it is, right? Yeah. So the Avantis has been a much anticipated and a long awaited little entry for us. We came out with the D Live, which is the flagship of the fleet, or I guess as I have it here, I can kind of wave my hands. I can Vanna over to it. We still got D Live is the flagship, and we've got lots of legs and lots of duration for that product. As most of you know, in our digital consoles, you probably heard my introduction that we use the FPGA technology that we developed of our own called the XCVI core. That technology started in the D Live and continues to develop. And every time we roll out new firmware, it's a new console, right? Because we add features. It's just not fixing flaws. We're adding features and expanding the capabilities all the time. And then the next entry was the SQ series, which I currently am using as a mixer stand for an IP8. It's a little embarrassing, but it works. We make everything out of metal. I'm not really worried about it. But I've got an SQ6, and that was our next entry using XCVI technology, the FPGA. And then we had kind of a gap in the middle of there. So it took us about 1.5 to 2 years to develop the Avantis, and there's some significant differences in what we did with the Avantis from either series. Now, the XCVI technology, the FPGA, gives us what I like to call the industry's leading processing capability, right? We don't use DSP, and FPGA is the FPGA engine in the D Live is a 36 core parallel processor. So if you're a computer geek, you're far smarter than I am. You probably recognize what that looks like. For the rest of us who might understand, well, I'm kind of used to hearing DSP. We don't use DSP in these consoles. The FPGA is the engine, and the part that's like the analogy I like to use is I work for a Brit company, right? And I drive a Mini Cooper, and I've driven Triumph motorcycles, right? It's sort of conditional to having the gig, but it's like putting a 10 million horsepower engine in my Mini Cooper, right? It doesn't really even make sense because there's so much math power there and so much processing power, but we can grow into it. And what we do is that's why we keep building in more and more features in the firmware rollouts. So we've downscaled that a little bit from the D Live series to the other series, but that technology gives us the big differentiators for us is everything we do is always 2496 signal processing. So it's 24-bit, 96 kilohertz input and output. We have industry leading lowest latency, right? So everything that we have, regardless of which console it is sub-millisecond, and that's full throughput with full processing and everything that you could add into it. It doesn't change. It's always sub-millisecond. So that, and there's also what we like to refer to as mixed coherency. And this is kind of a geek thing, so bear with me, but we're audio pros, right? Back in the days of the analog mixers, when everything moved at the speed of electrons, things remained phase coherent throughout a mix when they hit the output bus and they came out in phase. And that was one of the things that people didn't really understand it at the time, but early digital consoles didn't have phase coherency built in. They were really clean, but you never heard anybody say, hey, that sounds great. Well, they just say, yeah, it sounds really clean. The technology that's built into our FPGA processing literally maintains all of that mixed coherency. So you don't end up with any type of unintended EQ or dissonance because of phasing that happens inside of the processing, right? Inside of a console. We're the only manufacturer that you can go everything anywhere you want, route it any way that you can do it inside of the console, and there's no increase or differentiation in latency. It's not recompiling and aligning things to a higher latency level. It's always the same. It's astounding. And it makes for one of those things where we put consoles in, and I regularly go around and help contractors and integrators commission things, and people be like, did you change the pastor's microphone? Or I've never heard the system sound like this. Is there a new tech? It's just the console. So it sounds great. So those things are all the FPGA technology. So that's what we utilize. And we filled this big gap that we had between the big boys that you heard about in D-Live's deep dive, and then the little ones, the little brother in the SQ series, where we've got 3 models. And then we said, okay, what are we going to do? We built a snow plow. I am from Wisconsin, right? It's a big V plow. It takes up both sides of the road and it just clears everything out of its path. That's the Avantis. So if we talk about what that is, it's a 64 input mixer. Okay, so let's talk about what that capability is. When I say 64 mixable inputs, user assignable, like everything that you'd need for true mixing. Now, yes, there's 12 effects engines with stereo effects returns, so you can add 24 more channels if you want to do a channel listing. But that's not how you use mixers. So it's not a battle of the marketing guys, right? It's like, hey, I need 64 mixable inputs. That's great. They are set up to be mono. We can pair them or group them together, but it's 64 mono inputs or any subset of 64 on the input side. That's a ton. And price point on this mixer is fabulous. I don't speak about price in these things typically. I leave that to the TC Furlong team. If you're curious about it, reach out to them. They're happy to help provide pricing and information for you if you're looking to make a purchase. But the idea is, in capability, 64 inputs is a lot. And then outputs is, we've sort of borrowed from the big brother that's D-Live, right? And what that is D-Live has 64 programmable and user assignable output buses. The Avantis is 64 mixable inputs with 42 output buses. 42 is still a load of outputs, right? And especially at the price point. And what I mean by that, when we say 42 mix bus outputs, you can decide what they're going to be. This can be a left-right console. It could be a left-center-right console. You can set it up with left-right and a mono sub, or whatever the configuration is for your output section. And then you can also go in and decide, hey, I want this many groups. I don't want to use groups. I want to use auxes. I want my auxes mono, or I want them to be stereo. I need matrices. My matrices need to be mono, or they need to be stereo. As long as that number doesn't exceed 42, you're golden, right? Now, if it exceeds 42, it'll tell you, can't give you all that. Take something, adjust something, and then you can balance it. But 42 is an astounding number. So in a lot of these days where somebody comes up and goes, oh, I need this many stereo mixes for a big ears rig, or I'm doing a fill-in thing and I just found out that I need this many wedges, but I need a bunch of full back, and then we need some other stuff. You've got all of that capability, and I'll show you how to do it. So that processing, all 2496, that ease, we haven't talked about it, but the ease of use is astounding. And then that phase coherence that we talked about that's in all this series is in the middle section that's Avantis, right? The other thing that we did that's pretty significant is that we changed the chassis of the desk itself. We've got the outside of the desk is actually built with a tubular exoskeleton. It's a fun story that I like to show people that you can just see some of it. They put in some little accents here. I think we're trying to win some design awards, because if you, I wonder if I've got let me see if I can show a side shot of this thing, Shawn, real quick. Let me back up just a little bit. This was built with an exoskeleton, and the guy that's in charge of our mechanical engineering team, the Brit engineer was a former British tank commander, right? So when I say it's built like a tank, I'm not jazzing you. This is totally cool. We've also got some superbike nuts on our design teams, right? So the guys that go, hey man, it looks like a Ducati frame, it's great. So that is one of the features that we've built in, and what it's done is it's actually made the chassis stronger. And if I can get this overhead shot again, Shawn, as you can see on the desk itself, you've got these two beautiful 15.6-inch 1080p impact resistant touchscreens, right? And that is something that's completely unique. And what's great about it is this exoskeleton protects it in just an amazing way. It's 50 something pounds. It's not terribly heavy. I can pick it up, and I'm not a big guy, and I can haul it around myself. But ready for the rigors of the road and well constructed. Everything we make is aluminum. This is extruded. We've got some stuff that has aluminum chassis. We use steel. We don't use blow molded plastic in our consoles. We just build stuff for the rigors of the road, right? So Avantis, new frame. It's got what we call the continuity UI, right? And I make the joke that that sounds like a little bit like a medical procedure, but that's the idea of the new user interface that we put up with these two beautiful screens, right? We talk a little bit about that. Shawn, we got any questions or anything going on yet?
We did have one. Oops, sorry. I need to turn on my microphone if I'm
There we
going
go.
to talk to address people.
Redbeard, audio professional.
There was a question from Brian asking about aux send spills. Is there something like an aux send spill that only shows the contributing channels to that aux, kind of similar to like a DCA spill? Which I'll let you I can kind of let you show it. There's not something specific.
Brian, I'm an Irishman. I don't think spilling is a good thing, but I do believe that we can answer your question in a couple of good ways. Specific to some stuff that Shawn mentioned, we have DCA spill capability that you can program and you can turn it on and off. We haven't set it up specific for an aux spill, but we do have display capability so you can see what's in it that's available to you at all times. And if you wanted to, we'll show you a couple windows on what that looks like. And we do have some soft keys. So if what you wanted to do is actually bring up an aux and use it as, you know, like basically dumping out aux to faders, you can do that as well. So I hope that's a good answer for you. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that, Redbeard?
No, that answers it for now. We'll get into it when we show the
awesome
display.
This is cool. With you off screen, I feel sort of like I'm, you know, like a talk show host. It's pretty fun.
Yes.
I wish we had a band. Aaron, next year, you got to get a live band to back us up. It'd be super fun. We get some snare shots in there. It'd be great. You got a drummer on staff?
I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. Do you
we've got all sorts of musicians. We've got all sorts of musicians on staff. I'm sure we can put something together.
But specifically a drummer, I believe in hiring the handicapped.
I believe we do have one or two so-called drum players on staff. So we'll see.
All right. Good. I only can make fun of drummers because I'm a bass player and I just hang out with them. Doesn't mean that I'm any better or any worse. Thanks for the question, Brian. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. Okay, so as we were kind of talking about some of this stuff, feature set on this we covered. We talked about what's cool, makes Avantis amazing. Is when we talk about features for price point, the reason I say that it's this big snowplow of a desk, even though it's not really that cumbersome, is that we're getting tons and tons of applications in the market. I volunteer at a church where we had been using, of course, DLive. Thankfully, I took the gig after I'd already joined that church and they had DLive. I was hired into Allen and Heath, so I already knew the desk. It was great. I didn't actually provide the desks to my church, but they were using an SQ for the broadcast console and decided that they wanted an upgrade and went to the Avantis, and we can still repurpose the SQ. All of our consoles, regardless of what level you're at, if it's DLive or it's SQ or if it's Avantis, even our QU, we can still, there are some limitations with the QU, but the new stuff that we've got is all part of the same exact ecosystem using GigA's connectivity, which is our proprietary technology. And we can easily connect those as part of the same network. And all of those things can live on that network capable system. And then pieces and parts can interchange, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The Avantis, because it's so versatile with all of those inputs and outputs, or as I like to say, gazintas and gazautas, you don't really have to overthink it. Okay, if you know, back in the day when a 32 channel console was as big as pretty much anybody got, it was one of those things like, will we exceed 32? I mean, typically we use 24, but sometimes we do a couple of things, or I ended up with 4 more inputs and I had to do a sidecar mixer and it just wasn't what I wanted. It's cool because this is easy. You can do up to 64. Now, if we talk about gazintas and gazautas for the Avantis, I think it's a good place to start. This is part of our everything IO ecosystem, right? The Avantis itself has some local inputs. And Shawn, if you help me out here, I'm going to bring up a slide here real quick and have you jump me over. If we can bring that one up, it'd be great. The back of the Avantis looks like this. It has a dozen analog inputs and outputs on it that are balanced XLR. Okay, we don't have any 1/4 inch on the back of this. This is designed to be a pro console, right? So if you want to drop some DIs or get something in for what you'd need for other mechanisms of that nature. But the idea is, in addition to that, we also have stereo AES. We have some in and out on that. And then the other part is that we have a couple of audio networking card slots, okay? So we'll talk a little bit more about those, but that allows you to take the same types of cards that we use in the DLive system, and that allows connectivity for other consoles, either with our technology or other technologies, and we'll cover some of that as well. There's network capability, so standard TCP/IP network connectivity for this desk. As I said, it's a network protocol, right? And then we have our proprietary S-Link connection. And that's the little one that's circled with white in the diagram. That is our secret weapon, right? If we talk a little bit about, that's probably good for that, Shawn. You want something? You want to throw something in?
Well, no, I was just going to say we did have a question.
Oh, great.
That was talking from Aaron here. Is there fixed latency through the console regardless of processing? And I assume this is associated with the phase coherency thing. If so, what is the total latency from analog to analog?
Wow.
That is a well-written question.
Shawn, this is going to be one that you're going to answer. And before you answer it, today's prize is going to be a Magner Cider at $5.55 if you get this question right. So the question is, what is the total latency for full throughput?
Sub-millisecond latency, right around 0.7, I believe. No matter what processing.
0.7 of 1 millisecond.
0.1, yes, 0.7 of 1 millisecond. So
okay.
I believe it's like 0.176.
And does that change at all if I start throwing in compressors and tons of EQ? And what if I want to reassign it to a bunch of different subs or groups and or other things? And then I want to put Dyne 8s on the outputs.
So the Dyne 8s do add a little bit of
how much?
4 samples, you know, so
dude, that doesn't hardly even count.
It does not
you can
count,
still have it's still, that's why we just say sub 1 millisecond, guys, because sometimes it could vary by 4 samples. I might argue we will know that scientifically there's a difference in 4 samples, no arguments, but can we perceive it or do we hear it? Probably not.
Yeah, but no matter what we insert, do anything like that, it's still that same latency, which is super awesome.
Right on.
About as close as analog as you can get nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, and just to be really clear about it, that remains constant, and it doesn't matter how you insert or take our effects or processors or anything in out of what we have in the signal flow chain. Think of it like this. If we built this 64x42 mixer and we use an FPGA core in it, we can install all of the processing and have it running full on, full boat bozo all the time, and then just pretend like everything got bypassed, and when you turn it on, it comes in. It doesn't make any difference. It's always like it's running, right? And I can give you a couple of examples of that for fun stuff. If we bring up this little overhead shot of the screen, Shawn, let me get that. As you look, I'm looking at a compressor here, and you can see I have a little histogram. I don't have much signal coming through right now, or I can gack this down a little bit. Let's bring that in, and let's see, where am I? Threshold, bring the threshold down. Now you can see something a little bit fancier that's going on with it. This, what we call a histogram, just basically shows you what's going on with that signal with that specific compressor. But if I bypass that, it's still there. It's still measuring. It's just in gray to tell you, hey, I'm not functioning right now. And it says compressor out. If I kick it in, compressor in, then you can see that that's happening. So my little analogy for you is that the processor is always doing all the work all the time. But when you insert it, it doesn't change the latency, doesn't change any phase coherency. You don't have to worry. You never have to worry about compiling or trying to figure out what our latencies are. They're always phase coherent. It's mixed coherent for you all the way through in the throughput. Now, that being said, I'm sure somebody's thinking it, so I just want to say it in the crowd. Yes, we play well with others. As I said earlier, if you want to use Waves plugins, we play well with others. I've got a little slide here to show you a couple of cards that we do. We've got Dante cards of 2 different sizes, right? Because everybody has to pay licensing on Dante. Nothing wrong with Dante. We are a strong partner with Audinate. Matter of fact, we are the first manufacturer to put out our own product that is developed with Audinate with a 2496 Dante card capability. This happened some time ago, actually. It was first with our SQ and our D Live. And then in addition to that, we now have 2496 capable Dante preamps in remote boxes, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But our Dante cards are either 64 channel, 64 gazintas and 64 gazautas, or 128 channel, 128 by 128. Now, Avantis, more likely that you're probably going to use the 64N64 card, and that's great because it's less expensive. We don't have to pay as much licensing. Now, if it was part of a D-Live system, or if it's part of a large integrated system that you're going to use network audio, and you want to be able to transport 128 channels to and from everything, you can see all of that and you can access from that network with the Avantis. You're only going to be able to choose and mix 64 channels of that capability, but you can grow that as big as you want. So if you want a 400 by 400 audio network, we can set that up with a lot of connectivity for you, ours, Dante, and others, and you can pick and choose what you want out of that system. So the idea, when I say we play well with others, we really do want to just give you all the tools that you'd ever need and let you build with Legos, but we're just going to use audio products instead. In addition to that, to speak to the point about Waves, the yellow card in the middle is our Waves 3 card. And that is a 2496 capable card that is in support of the Waves sound grid connectivity, right? And that is another 2496 capable mechanism to put audio over Cat5 cable or Cat6 as it is, Cat5 or Cat5e shielded or Cat6 shielded, but I'm not preaching to you. You'll just know that already, right? I can tell Aaron already knows it because he's grinning. But we've got Waves, and then we've also got our own connectivity, Giga Ace. We can do a MADI card if you want to do MADI connectivity. There's fiber. You can do fiber for our product, for Fiber Ace, which is our Giga Ace, that's fiber connectivity. Or if you want, there's fiber connections on the MADI card as well. So lots of different capabilities for you in those toys to play with.
We did have a couple questions just come in.
Awesome.
One was on the Waves. He said, is the Waves interface core to core? Which I believe you're talking about, Aaron, if you want to type a little bit more explanation. But the Waves card connects directly to a like SoundGrid server, and that's how it's going to communicate. Works with any of those, and is brought back in through the Waves protocol.
Right on. Now, the one thing that I wanted to talk about, the reason I brought the Waves stuff up is, yes, we play well with others, but if you've worked with Waves in other systems, you know it adds latency. There's latency there. Now, I don't say I don't want to tell you that you shouldn't use those products. That's your choice. You're the audio pro. If it's what you love, do what you love. We'll give you the opportunity to do it. It does, in fact, increase your latencies. And part of the things that I might encourage you to investigate is before you automatically go to your choice of, hey, this is what I always use in this setting, that could work great. Or if you want to put it in the inserts for talents in-ear monitors, you might want to give our stuff a try first, because the varsity level plugins that we have sound, in my opinion, every bit as good. In some applications, you may find that they have a signature that you could even prefer. And I validate that there's a lot of other things in the market that sound really good as well. So mix and match the tools that you can choose from, and it just gives you, more colors on the palette to be able to paint with. So whatever works best for you.
Yep. Another question was, with the Avantis and the entire line, really, can you use a DT168 or similar stage box through the S-Link port, or is it through the Dante only and required with a card? I'm curious if we can mix the DT168s and DX168s in our inventory.
Right on. All right. Who gave us that question?
That was Sam Zuckerman.
Sam, you advanced quickly to the bonus round. I wish I could send you a Magners. That was really a great question. And here's what I think I can give you for a good answer. Maybe now is a good time that I can bring up just a slide, because it sounds like Sam already knows what he's looking at, but maybe not everybody does. So I want to show a few things that we have here. Bear with me a second. Let's just try that. Okay, so we have what we call our Everything IO stage box series, right? And what this means is all of the pieces that we work with can work with the S-Link technology that we have on the back of an Avantis. Okay, so let me qualify this a little bit. This isn't the ultimate answer to Sam's question, but it's close. If it's our proprietary technologies, that means that it's either the GX 4816 or a DX connection, or even some of our legacy stuff that you'll see at the bottom of the page, which was the AR 2412s or the AB 168s. Aaron, I think the TC team still has some QU and some AB 168 boxes and rentals. The cool thing about that is if somebody comes in and says, hey man, Aaron hooked me up, I want an Avantis console for a rental project that I've got coming up 3 months from now, we'll get that to you, and it'll work with the existing box if that's what you'd like to use. When it comes to our proprietary technology, either the AR, the AB, the DX, or the GX, that means it's put on our, what used to be called the ACE protocol, and now we call the Giga ACE protocol. The S-Link on the back of an Avantis S is for smart. It's basically a smart switch, and it recognizes which of our protocols we're plugging into it. You don't have to set anything. It just says, hey, I see it, I know what to do with this. Now, to Sam's question specifically, if we're using DX series products, we can mix and match multiple DX boxes. We can hook a couple of DX boxes in series on a S-Link switch. If we hook up AB or the AR series, whatever those are, it kind of needs to be one flavor on that switch, right? Now the DT is Dante specific, and this is Sam, the question to answer to Sam's question. The DT boxes that we make, like the DT168 or the DT164, those can be hooked up to any Dante switch, but it needs to come in on a Dante card. So there is that additional cost for us. Though the reason and the way that we did that is, if we talk about it a little bit, as I said, Dante is cool. It's a flag that all the manufacturers can fly, and it's for the first time ever. We're not at peace. We're all still at war. But the idea is that we can all go, okay, we'll call a truce on this, and we'll all use that format. It's really good, because if not, our integrators are all going to shoot us. What it really comes to is, I truly believe that our Giga ACE protocol is the most solid, rock solid, most dependable, best sounding protocol in the market, bar none. Okay. But it's point to point. And that is, in fact, the advantage of Giga ACE. If I plug anything into, whether it's a DLive or an Avantis or whatever else it is, an S-Link into one of my GX 4816 boxes or a DX 168 box or whatever that looks like, I have an established connection that the clock answers every time and it doesn't glitch. And I mean this with the utmost respect about other network topologies, but we don't have to worry about assigning an IP address. We don't have to worry about what the subnet is. There aren't any other complications. It just plugs and plays every single time. And it does it quickly, and it establishes it in a rock solid way. And I think that our clock sounds astounding. And it's because we have this FPGA that we're using as the engine and the processor, right? So it gives us mathematically and in design a huge advantage. So for many applications, I usually say, hey, can you do that first? Because that's the most rock solid, dependable, and least expensive typically. Well, no, I really got to have Dante, and that's cool. And I totally get it. And Sam, if you're a Dante guy, I'm with you. And thank you. You do have to buy a Dante card for ours, but our card and our boxes communicate in a new way. You're going to see this from other manufacturers in the future. Used to be that everybody used the Brooklyn 2 chipset. It was a 2448 chipset that was in our first series of Dante cards that we had in some of these consoles. And it works, and it works very well, but it's limited to 2448. We had to up convert from those cards that we built using that older chipset. What was it now, a year or year and a half ago?
Yeah, about a year.
When we released our new 2496 Dante cards, which, by the way, have a setting in Dante Controller. You can knock them down if the rest of your system is all 2448 and it can't handle a 2496 signal. No big deal, but you're future ready, right? So you can buy the new card, knock it down if you need to. But if you have the capability within our boxes, the 2496 preamps, the electronics, the preamps themselves are 2496. And in the DT boxes, you have that 2496 conveyance. And if you think about it, this probably isn't the most accurate engineering answer for it, but think of it as a call and answer. There's a chipset that we've worked with Audinate that they developed that we've implemented in our product so that our 2496 pre's will talk with our desk through that card interface. Now, everybody else's, for the most part, everybody else's previous Dante preamps were all 2448. That's just not our gig. We love everything at 2496 and we think it's a differentiator. So that keeps that signal all 2496. And if you want to, you can do that redundantly through Dante. We've got multiple ports on the Dante cards and a network control port and all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty easy. And when you, the other part that, I don't want to make it sound like I'm bragging about this. I want to be humble in it. But if you compare the cost of an Avantis system, even with our Dante stuff, chances are you're probably still at a price advantage over some of the competitors that aren't even 2496. So it really gives you a big step forward. Great question. Thank you very much.
Yep. We did have another one from Brian here. Asking, can you change the EQ display to show the Q instead of the bandwidth? So I was going to say, if you want to pull that up on the screen and also show some of the, like basically some of the pop-up controls and things that you can do with the soft key for EQs would be good.
Do you want to do it? Dude, I think it's your turn.
All right. I guess I'm on.
All right.
So now that we're up here, so you do have the display over here, which is going to give you your frequency, your Q, and your gain capabilities on there. You do also have the ability to do this with one of the soft keys below. You can actually have it pop up as an option down on the bottom here. So if you've got quick changes that you want to do without necessarily popping up the screen, you've got that capabilities. One of the nice things that I really like with the continuity UI, when I move something with my finger, to change my frequency, my fat knob off to the side of the screen here automatically goes to my Q. So I can go ahead and change that really quickly. So it gives you that kind of that ability to be able to use a touch screen, for the young guys that like touch screens, or I can use a knob if I like using a knob. So hopefully that answers the question there for you.
How do you do, Brian? Was that everything that you needed?
Oh, wow.
I thought you did pretty well. If you need a finer point, we want to answer it for you. Absolutely. So that was good.
You want to go through a little bit more of like layout? Yeah.
Hey, Pat, you got your mic off at the moment.
Sorry, I did that as a cough switch, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So yeah, why don't we go through and we'll just, while we're on the screen, we'll talk a little bit about what some of the processing and what the actual desk looks like, right? So if I jump as a quick overview on it, on the console itself, we've got 2 banks of 12 faders each. They are independent, and I'm working around an iPhone here, so bear with me. But they'll do whatever you want on up to 6 layers. You've got all kinds of soft keys everywhere in the known universe that you could imagine on the sides here. You've got some in the center of the consoles. You've got some additional programmability we'll talk about here. And I'm so happy about this, and I'm super, super thankful that for me, the left-handed guy, I actually have my tap tempo for my delay on the left side of the console, so I can actually mix the way that I want. I've laid this out in a pretty simple and traditional way that we would go ahead and do that. If you look at the display here, this basically tells us what I've got for input strips. I've color coded them. And in this continuity UI, the lower section of that has become our select for the channel, right? We don't have to have the green row of buttons down here. We still have the tools that you want and you need as an audio pro, right? We've got programmable rotaries here, and we'll talk about that. We've got mute knobs for buttons for everything that you'd need here. That's easy to get to. Our blue mix knobs are below that. And then we've got our PAFL. Okay, so that's pre-fade or after fade listen condensed into one knob. We'll talk a little bit about functionality on that if we wish. In addition to that, we've got some other stuff that we talked about these. A graphic EQ section. If I grab something as the main section here and I want to see what the graphic EQ looks like, I can grab one of these and I can hit it, and that will come up on the faders itself. And then you can see what you're doing here as a visual. That's easy to get to. Hit it again and we'll jump back out of it. So 24 faders, you get the lower half, you get the upper half. It's technically it's a 28 band graphic, but it's still third octave. So you can look at what that would be in a quick peek if you want to. Just a little heads up, there's free apps that are available for this desk. If you want to play with some of that stuff, you can download for iPad. It's only iPad available for Avantis. We don't do some of the fancier stuff that we did for both formats with Android that we offered in SQ and Q. Frankly, we don't do it in DLive and Avantis because there's so much information bidirectionally for 64 channels that the iPad and the iOS format works better for us, and the battery life is significantly better on the tablets. So that's sort of the story on that. Very soon, I was hoping that we'd have it by the expo, but it might be a little bit longer. We're going to have a fully functional director type software. We have DLive Director is our full programmability software, and it can function as a control surface from your laptop if you wish. We have that available in DLive. We do not yet have it available in Avantis. I expect that to drop in January. We've had a couple of delays in the development on that, and we're also going to drop a firmware update at the same time for Avantis. We had one little bug fix that we had right after it rolled out, and we've got a couple of things that we are working on as far as improvements for the Avantis, so we want to be able to include those as well.
Did have one more question from Brian on the reset. Can you reset a single frequency back to 0 and not the entire graph?
I don't know. I haven't done that.
Yeah, I was going to actually
Let's find out. Come on up here, Redbeard. Let's figure it out. So we'll grab an output. We'll do a
switch to your,
go to my graphic. I'll hit 1, and I don't know how we do that here. What was it? It used to be depends on a Q or. Oh, wait, I got it. Let's see if we do reset and we hit just the one frequency. No, that's not it. That's not it. That's reset full EQ.
Yeah, I think we have to reset the full EQ.
Yep, I think currently it's reset the full EQ. You can zero the whole EQ, but not one frequency yet. But Shawn,
on DLive, we actually have that functionality. It could be in there because I'm learning new things on this desk every day. But on DLive, you can actually hit reset and just hit the select button, and it'll reset that specific frequency.
All right.
If you are resetting on the parametric, it is just a reset of the whole parametric, just back to flat.
Right on. Great question. And you win in advance. You two advance quickly to the bonus round. I do want to do some follow-up on that for you. So if you have a moment and are interested, if you don't, I understand. But if you want to drop an email over to the TC Furlong team, we'll see if we can do a little research and follow up with you, probably post seminar or post expo. I'll see if I can get it tomorrow.
Or if you want to hang on the line after we're done, we can mess around. We might be able to figure it out.
Yeah. The other thing that we have, and it's a good time for me to segue to this, our team. There's, as you would imagine, there's people that are far smarter than I am in our team, and I'm happy to have all of that. We have multiple resources. You have your boots on the ground. You have the TC Furlong team. You have support for TC through IN, through Shawn, and through our organization. And we have support at AmericanMusicAndSound.com, all typed out, longest email address in the world. But that is our resource, and we have a dedicated team of support pros. I'm not certain that they're all fully human. I think there might be some robo parts involved, but they're brilliant guys, and we do answer telephones. We've got an 800 number that you can call into if you'd prefer to speak to somebody about something. And we do support, and not just support and design, but also if there's warranty issues, or if you wanted to find out about a repair, or, hey man, I dumped a big gulp in my SQ or my Avantis, what do I do? Give us a call and we'll get you taken care of. We do service our own products. We have a facility that's in South Haven, Mississippi, which sounds like it's Mississippi, but it's really a Memphis suburb. So it's only a couple of days away shipping time during normal things. Shipping right now is a little crazy for everybody, I think. But the point being that we actually, so if you had a warranty issue, we'll get you taken care of. I mean, sometimes we just send advanced replacements and it's not an issue. But if whatever the emergency would be, you've got support, you got live humans you can talk to, and we've got resources deeper than Shawn and I even. So it's great.
We're coming up to about 15 minutes left, just to
Okay.
give you a heads up. I was going to mention, you talked a little bit about processing from the the overhead shot there, but
Yeah.
one thing I would like to mention, you want to pull up some of the compressors and talk about DPAC a little
Yeah.
bit? I think that would be a cool.
Let me do just a couple of things real quick on that. What I want to do is just run through an input strip, right? So that
Perfect.
people get what's there. What's always built into these desks is everything comes with a preamp, right?
Switch your screen.
Oh, thank you very much, Shawn. We haven't even cracked those ciders yet. The this one I happen to load with the free tube stage preamp that you can load in. And by the way, you can load all of these into all the inputs. And if you wanted to load extra stuff on outputs and it's available, well, once again, doesn't affect any of the latency. So we can turn that stuff on and off and play with that for tone. This is your preamp settings. I'm using a digital input, so some of it doesn't show up quite as you would see it, but that's there and available. Below that, you're going to see that you've got a fully functional gate that's built into the desk. This isn't a plugin that you have to purchase. It's a Pro Series gate with a self key on it, and you can decide how it's keyed, where it's keyed from. There's a library that you can choose from if you want to run through it. Below that, much as we do have in the D-Live, we have both a high and a low pass filter built into it so that you can put in what you need to get rid of cymbal bleed or whatever it is that you're playing with and focus that in on every IO. There's 4 bands of parametric EQ, and you can choose that. Shawn's kind of showed you some of the features that are built into that in addition to the high and low pass. So a total of 6 bands all show up here, but you can treat them as you wish. These are just the standard settings for every input, and then the output sections have processing as well. We have a standard manual or peak RMS compressor. So if you buy the bare bones, just buy an Avantis, it comes with this on every input. You don't have to buy additional plugins. So that's available for you as well. So it's a fully functional compressor. Also gives you a parallel path. So if you want to do some New York style stuff where you're going to mix some of your dry back in with your compressed signal, that's there. And there's a side chain source that's available there if you want to use your kick drum to gate your, or excuse me, as a trigger for compression for something else for your bass. So all the way down, and then as we go through the rest of the processing, that's our left-right display, and then we've got our selection for whatever it is that we're working on for the channel strip. Now, specific to what Shawn said, hey, can you bring me up some stuff that we can look at? I've loaded this with the effects expansion pack that we have, okay? And that is a separate SKU. So if you buy the Avantis, it comes with everything you need. But if you want some certain flavors, we have some really cool modeled compressors that we've done that we sell as an upgrade package. The cool thing is you buy it and you pay for it once. You can use everything that's in it in any instance and load it up as many times as you want, and it'll work flawlessly. Gives you lots of different options. And then the other part is any firmware updates or additional products that come available for that pack will always be no additional charge to you. So if you want to look at what that library looks like, we have some really cool stuff. One of my favorites is the Peak 76 or Peak Limiter 76, as we call it, that looks like that. Is that on the right one? Ta-da! So if you like a Yuri 1176, if that's what you're into and you like the sound of that as a limiter, those make phenomenal drum smash group limiters, right? Or whatever else you'd want.
What if I like the silver face a little bit better?
There you go. That was a nice leading question, by the way. Then we'll just hit the button and you can have the tone of the silver one instead. I do want to tell a little story about this, and that the 1176 is a fun model and that it was actually built off of a unit that we borrowed from Olympic Studios in London. We've got a great relationship there. Our managing director has a PhD in digital signal processing. His name's Rob Clark. You might have heard me speak of him. He's just a great guy, and he's still so passionate about it that he's running this entire company around the world, and he's the guy that heads up developing these plugins. He just loves it. It's what he does for fun. So the 1176 is built on the exact unit that used to be in Abbey Road, right? So it's not just an 1176, it's the one, right? And they were the ones, Olympic actually brought it over in the, like fancy, practically armored card case that they brought over. It was like, hey, do you want the black face or do you want the silver face? We bought them both. So like we modeled them both, and there's a slight tonal difference. So you can geek out on stuff like that. There's also some other great stuff that I love. The Mighty compressor is one that we've put out. That's a, what is it? People of the Valley compressor. It was modeled out of the 70s. That thing makes anything with low end sound beyond ginormous. I don't know that you probably want to use it for a subtle female vocal, but it's just massive sounding, just huge. And then, but for the, if we do want a great sound, and the one that I really like, we've got an opto that we use. That's, whoops, I've got to hit it correctly, and then it'll come up. I keep hitting the wrong one. Let's see if I can get it. Opto, I can't get it to highlight. Huh, did I glitch it up? Let's see what I got. I'll bring it up on another channel. Opto. There it is. The opto is basically built off an opto model that if you guys ever worked in optical compressors, they used to, where they usually sounded best was right before they blew up in the studio when they ran really, really hot and the circuit itself was literally about to melt. For fun, the guys actually built in, there's a transient setting and there's one called burn. And burn literally like adds it like you're driving it hard. It sounds awesome. And I love the sound of this. Don't use your typical vocal ratios when you use this. Use your ears because it behaves a little bit differently and it's really fun. So those are just a couple of examples. Shawn, was there anything that you wanted me to cover that I didn't show in some of the compressor models?
No, but we did get a question from Brian also on the compressor. Is it pre or post on the aux send, or is it possible to choose? Which that may have actually stumped me. I don't know on that one.
I don't know either. Pre or post EQ on the aux send?
Nope. Compressor.
Is the compressor pre or post?
Yes.
I think we can choose. You know what, Brian? I can't answer that for you right now, but Shawn and I will look into it and we will make certain that you get an answer back that's accurate.
Again, hang out at the end of the call.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah, one of the things I think, because the guys want to capture this, we don't want to spend too much time just running down the rabbit holes.
Yep.
But we will, in fact, run down the rabbit holes and let the guys just edit some of that stuff out at the end.
Most definitely.
Cool. All right. So, did we show everything that you wanted to see? We're good?
Yes, we covered DPAC.
Awesome.
Actually, one thing we didn't cover on DPAC, you didn't talk about Dynates.
I'm headed right there, buddy. Thank you for the reminder. So on the screen here, you'll see, in addition to where I've got the compressor I showed you, and then below that was the left, right, there's an insert capability. Now, if I jump into one of these blocks anywhere on this, we've got menus across the top. I was just going down the touch screen, but the same thing can happen here as I jump across the menus, right? So if I select a channel and I can jump into wherever that would be, I can jump into the EQ. And as you can see across the top here, I've got preamp, filter, gate, insert A, then I've got PEQ comp, insert B, and delay. And by the way, there's a setting that we can actually flip the compressor and the EQ, and you can do that by the channel or you can do it globally. So if you decide that you like the sound of the compressor on the bass guitar before the EQ and you want to add something back in afterwards, great, you can do that till your heart's content. What I want to show you is how to use these inserts. And what that did is it actually dropped in insert B. And on the insert B page, I have inserted a Dyne8. Now, a Dyne8 is our answer to a multi-band dynamics processor that does 4 bands of multi-band dynamics. So it's multi-band compression, right? And then there's also 4 bands of dynamic EQ that you can use with that in conjunction. Okay, so those two things work together. And the idea would be that if you've worked with, some people really dig, it started kind of became popular with, Waves came up with a couple of plugins. One was called a C6 that gave you a couple of notches and some stuff. And that was an easy way to do it. If you haven't used multi-band compression, it helps you just make things, it helps you put a lid on things by frequency band sets. And that you can also, with the adaptive EQ that we have built in, instead of just squashing those bands, you can choose a band. And the example that I always use is when Shawn mixes my band and I'm playing bass and I'm hammering on a P bass and I'm playing way too loud, it gets a little bit, when I'm hitting hard, there's a nasty kind of 1K click on the bass. And Shawn wants to get rid of that. He drops a Dyne8 in. And instead of just squashing everything in multiple bands, he hones in on one location. He goes, okay, that's Sparkle with his 1K thing, and he's playing too hard because he had a couple of ciders. And what he does is he puts a notch in. So the harder I play, the more it notches at 1K. So you don't hear it the same. Now that's an easy analogy, which is why I give you that, even if a bass player can understand it, right? Now, a more adaptive way that it's really functional is we both use it at a church that we worked with, where there's one pastor who is a little bit soft voiced, and he has a tendency to walk out right underneath the cluster, which we all know with any type of headset, even a really high quality Shure Twinplex, can still be a little bit difficult with some really soft spoken speakers. So what happens is like about 8K starts to get a little hot when he steps out there. And rather than have to play with EQ or panic, what we've done is for his mic setting, we have it as a preset in the Dyne 8 setup so that when he's speaking dynamically and it's really great, it's no big deal. But as soon as 8K starts to get a little too hot, we know that it can just dump out automatically with that Dyne 8. So it helps shape the sound. On an Avantis, you can buy the D-Pack upgrade and it gives you 16 instances of Dyne 8 that you can drop into the console, right? Now, if you want to have 64, D-Live's always available, and we don't upcharge. All of that stuff's included in any D-Live that you buy. For the Avantis, it's in the D-Pack, and there's 16 instances that can be run.
We did have one question from Alex. He said, can you mention and explain the extra faders on the right that you can lock?
Alex, you rock, dude. Thanks, man. Absolutely. So if we get into this, if I go into
shot.
Oh, thank you. Is that it? Have I got it? Nope, not yet. Try one more time.
There you go.
All right. If we press it once instead of twice, it works better, right? So as I have this set up on this console, if I go into setup, what's kind of cool, I haven't shown you guys this, but you can drag and drop anything that you want anywhere you want it, right? So if I go in and I want to drag in a bunch of console or a bunch of channels here for grins, I'm going to, at the top layer here, I have set up with a bunch of DCAs and I've got some matrices and a sub. So that's in, control, strip assign is where I need to be. And I was going to show them how to set up an IP controller. It looks very similar. So this is what I have laid out. Now, the thing that he was asking about is here we can lock master strips. So in my overhead, you can see that on the right-hand side, because the entire world is right-handed, I'm not really resentful about that, is Ford gray strips here because most people want to keep something over here that's their master section. Now, I don't have to in my left-handed way, but what we've got set up is stereo mains and a subsend, and I've got a couple of matrices that I would send if I was mixing. If I want to keep those there all the time, I can. Now, right now I have it set up so they're in the top layer, and when I go to the second layer, it becomes something else, and in the third layer, I've got it laid out differently. But if I just want to lock those in place, I can literally just, it's as easy as going into setup. This is the way it would come up in default. Hit lock master strips, close that up, and now if I change that, no matter what layer I'm on, I don't even have anything laid out, and those four always remain there. So if you like that, you can use that as your option. If you're a picky guy like me and you decided you didn't want that, I just go back in and I can unlock that and I can put that wherever I want. So that's a cool solution that we added in Avantis that we don't have in the other series. So that's kind of been a step forward for us. For fun, just to show that we can do it, we've got scene capabilities that for me, I decided that I wanted to make this a lefty capable desk. So I laid out my own lefty layout, and it takes a second because I've just loaded the scene, but I've just laid out this thing so that it can be a lefty JA setup, right? So what I've done simply, if I close these windows, you can see it now. I just, with a scene execution, laid out all the DCAs on the left-hand side of the console. Here's my sub, here's my matrices, and then here's all the channel strips that I wanted to. And if I want, I can jump back and I'll just recreate that as we had it before. So that's a fun one for me. And I like to just show it off for my brothers out there who may in fact be left-handed, and to let them know that we built something specifically for them.
We did get another question from Sam here on the D-Pack. If you have more than one console, do you need to buy more than one plug-in pack?
Yes. Yeah, and let's talk about that. That's a great question, Sam. Thank you. So the D-Pack is assignable by serial number and DNA number, actually, to the specific processor that's in the desk. You authorize it once, and it always lives in that desk. There's no way to turn it off. That's the good news. And even if you update the firmware, everything that happens, it always enacts it, and it always makes it active on that console. Now, this is an executive decision by our team in the UK. What we really wanted is that if somebody pays the money for our products, that no matter what, under any circumstances, will it stop working in that console. I do understand that for a lot of touring engineers and working engineers, they want to have a local authorization that they can bring in for whatever the product would be, but that's not the way that we've chosen to do it. We're not going to adapt for that. There's so much difficulty in making certain that those authorizations are active and working. And frankly, there's lots of failure, and that's not something that we wanted to have. So instead, it's one authorization per console. So if you bought 2 Avantis, you have to buy 2 authorizations. Can't use the same thing on both. But even at that, for what you get for the plugins at the price point for the D-Pack, it's really a super inexpensive solution.
And also, when you buy the desk, you can buy it pre-installed.
Yeah, thank you very much for
already
that.
Enabled.
Yeah, we'll ship it to you already loaded if that's what you need. Now, talking about some of that stuff for touring applications and stuff, it's just been, I think, about 90% of what we're selling, and maybe even more than 90, like 92 or 94% of what we're selling in the US has been enabled with the D-Pack right away.
Yep.
But you don't have to. You can buy the desk and you could always enable it at a later date. It's not a difficult process. It's easy to do. It's easy enough that a bass player can do it. So.
I know we're running up on time here, but I do want to mention, I like talking about the USB recording in here because it's a little bit of a different.
Then you better talk about the USB recording in here.
I'm going to jump up on the screen here. So we do have some USB capabilities for recording in the desk. It is just a 2-track USB recording. But I like mentioning they've done, Allen and Heath has done a little bit different spin on it than some of our other desks. D-Live also has 2-track recording to a USB, but Avantis actually has some internal memory. So what it does is it actually records to the internal memory, which gives you the best performance. So you don't have to rely on the speeds of a USB drive. Because it is recording at 96K 2-track. So it records to internal memory, and then actually when you're done with the recording, you actually transfer that over to a USB device to get it outside of the console. So it makes it super robust, which is one thing I really like pointing out just for archival of shows or, House of Worship. A lot of times people wanted just a backup recording versus having, just in case your stream or something goes wonky, you've got a backup. So I like mentioning that one.
You want to show them the little calibration lights discovery that we found today?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, cool.
Here, let's switch over here.
All right. So as I mentioned, Redbeard is sort of our local hero, and he's an audio legend. And he came to me last week and said, "Hey, why is there chromatic meter configuration on the Avantis? Because we don't have chromatic meters like we do on the SQ." And I actually found out today that this screen that we've got here allows you to set whatever that metering level would be with a color coded LED or what is a simulated LED readout on this. And I found out today that, tying this into Shawn's previous comment, if we go to utility and we go into the USB, our geeky engineers actually built in 2 LEDs to give you that as variable peak meters that you could have in one location to monitor the USB recording level as well. So fun stuff.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for showing us all that. I think we're going to mark the official end of the webinar here. So Shawn, Pat, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for showing us all the features of the Avantis. It's a really cool new product. I'm always excited when I get to see it. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys for coming. And we appreciate you again hosting the Digital Console Expo. Ooh, it's beer o'clock now. So
well, this is the award for the trivia that Shawn helped answer earlier. So
cheers.
Slancha.
Thank you guys all for coming. So we appreciate it.
Thank you to everyone who joined us today for the Avantis Deep Dive. I do want to give you a quick preview of everything we've got coming up tomorrow, starting with our main session at 10 a.m. Central Time. We're going to have presentations from Digico and Waves tomorrow. Then they're going to have some breakout Q&A sessions from 1 p.m. Central up through 3 p.m. Central. It's 4 separate sessions that you can sign up for each manufacturer. And finally, we'll be seeing these two gentlemen again tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Central Time for the final Alan and Heath deep dive. And that's going to be a look at the SQ series. All of the sign up links for all of that can be found at digitalconsoleexpo.com. As a reminder, we're recording these deep dive sessions. We're recording our main sessions as well. So you'll be able to find all of that information, all of that on our YouTube channel as well. So thank you once again for joining us today. I think we're going to sign off on the official end of this webinar. Thanks once again to Pat and Shawn, and we hope to see everybody again tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, everyone.